Okay, afternoon everybody. I'm James Feenan from the Project Delivery Unit in South Dublin County Council. I'm just before we hand you over to Rory in Barry Transportation, he'll give you the technical details of the routes that were examined and the route that's been selected. I'm just going to give you some background information in terms of what's helped to shape and form this emerging route. I suppose starting off to give you the definition of a greenway from various Department of Transport guidelines, and that the greenway is defined as a recreation or pedestrian corridor that's reserved for non-motorized journeys. And I suppose in addition to that is an urban greenway, which is a slightly different dimension as well, which this route is providing for also, and that's to serve commuters going to work and education. Just in terms of, again, what's forming the context for this, the Climate Change Action Plan for the county, which we went out in consultation in 2019, that seeks to expand the county's green routes and greenways, and also the cycle network to promote a modal shift from cars. Now this route itself that we're seeking to propose to yourselves today, that this it would extend an existing small section of greenway, the Griffin Valley Greenway, which was opened in 2011. Some of you may be familiar with it. That consists of about 1.5 kilometres of shared pedestrian cycle route with lighting that goes from the Red Bridge down at the Grand Canal near Grange Castle in the 12th Lock, and goes extends up through Griffin Valley Park, and before it essentially ends at Griffin Avenue before the route, the pathways just revert back to pedestrian paths. This route itself also has been informed by the Greater Dublin Area Cycle Network Plan, which in 2013 was launched by the National Transport Authority, and that consists of an integrated network of urban, interurban and green routes for the 7 local authorities within the Greater Dublin area. So the study area for this route itself is consistent with those routes that are indicated in that. Just in terms of the kind of the tourism dimension as well for this route, Lucan was designated as a destination town by Fáilte Ireland in last year under their tourism strategy for Dublin in 2020. And they've awarded some funding for that as well. And it is also located within the Liffey Valley cluster, this area, which is a concept that was introduced in our own county tourism strategy for South Dublin in 2015. The route itself as well has been informed by the Lucan Village Design Statement, which was completed in 2007, and that included some aspirations in relation to providing more cycle crossings, more cycle routes, and also pedestrian crossings for the River Liffey. The route itself is also in the draft cycle South Dublin programme, which went out in consultation just there before Christmas, yet to be agreed by council. And this route as well has been presented to the Lucan Palmerston Fonthill Area Committee meeting. Now, it was February 2020, and due to COVID-19 issues, there has been some delay in terms of how we go to the next step of consultation. We were always intending on doing a consultation, but obviously we can't do the more traditional physical form, so that's related or resulted in some delay in us getting that to you now. Just to give you the scheme objectives from a wider level, there are prescribed objectives that we have to comply with, particularly since this is essentially being funded by the Department of Transport, and they have prescribed objectives for schemes like this within the budget bracket that it's in. And at a wider level, that is to promote economic growth and tourism, to improve pedestrian cyclist safety, to encourage physical activity and health, to encourage modal shift for car users to walking and cycling, to minimise environmental impacts, to integrate with transport plans and networks, and to improve accessibility. Now, there are then local level objectives that then were defined, opportunities that are presented for the route, and that is to form part of a recreational loop between the 2 canal greenways, the Grand Canal and the Royal Canal, which are at various phases of completion and construction. And to also, that would be suitable for walkers and cyclists of different ages and abilities, to provide for commuter cyclists, including pupils and local schools, and as Rory will go into later, to serve this route seeks to serve about 20 schools as it is emerging at the moment, and to also link with Lucan Village to increase business. So just this next slide here, just to take a bit of a step back before Rory gives you the more technical detail, and to maybe just to give you a flavour of why in South Dublin we're promoting projects like this from a kind of a wider context, looking at transport and maybe issues of climate change. Traffic congestion in the county did grow by 11% on main roads in 2016, and that's kind of annual figures that were taken in 13 locations within the county. Combined with population growth, traffic congestion is predicted to continue to grow. The population of South Dublin itself is predicted to grow by about 50,000 people by 2030. And within that context, cycling, or research has shown that cycling is considered to be a credible alternative to the car for short and medium length journeys. And there are associated benefits that have been identified for that in terms of reducing traffic congestion long term, reducing carbon emissions, promoting healthier lifestyles in the short term, and promoting economic benefits to local business in the short to medium term. In terms of how the county and the area is doing in terms of numbers of people cycling, there is currently the target is 10% for the cycle mode share to be under the National Cycle Policy Framework in terms of the number of people commuting to school and work. The target is for 10% of people for them to cycle. And just to show how the county is doing, the number of people, or the percentage of people cycling on a regular basis in the county, accounts for about 3.8% of the transport mode share. And how Lucan is, so obviously we're below the target. So in terms of how Lucan is faring for that, the percentage of people cycling to work in 2016 was 2.9%, which is a bit below the county average. And I suppose to end my presentation a bit more of a positive note, the percentage or proportion cycling to school was 4.4%. So that is a bit above the county average and getting a bit more towards the national target of 10%. So I'll just hand you over to Rory Collins now in Barry Transportation. Thank you.
Thanks, James, and hello, everybody. I'll just be giving a quick overview of the work that's been done to date on the route selection and design of this urban greenway. So Barry Transportation were initially employed by South Dublin County Council to do a route selection starting at the 12th block of the Grand Canal and finishing at or near the existing bridge in Lucan. And this was known as Study Area 1, and there's a map of that area just shown up there now. Following the completion of this route selection, a second study was then done to investigate options further west, which used the existing pedestrian bridge to link Lucan Domain to St. Catherine's Park. Up there, and this was known as Study Area 2. Finally, a comparison exercise was then done to determine the optimum route from either of these study areas, which would best meet the scheme objectives. In Study Area 1, there were 30 route options considered. In Study Area 2, there were a further 9. So the methodology for how this was done, all possible route options within each study area were explored and concept designs were prepared for each one. The route options were then assessed against one another on the following themes: cost, quality of service, this is for cyclists, and was split into comfort, safety, directness, coherence, and attractiveness. The route was designed with cyclists of all abilities in mind so that they could be used by beginners as well as experienced cyclists. The routes were assessed on integration. This is integration with wider traffic plans with the walking and cycling network, any impacts on the traffic network and on the public transport network. They're assessed for impacts on the environment, for their viability from a planning perspective, and for tourism potential. So no route was chosen based on any one thing. It was a combination of all of these, which ultimately drove the options assessment. The design guidance and standards that were used for this project were the Design Manual for Urban Roads and Streets, the National Cycle Manual, the Greater Dublin Area Cycle Network Plan, and the Rural Cycleway Design. The assessment was done in accordance with the Common Appraisal Framework for Transport Projects and with the Public Spending Code. So the study area was split up into sections so that the route selection could be done for each section separately. Here we'll look at the southern section first. So the southern end of this section is at the 12th lock of the Grand Canal. The northern end is at the existing footbridge over the N4 Lucan bypass. This section is made up mostly of Green Valley Park, which runs north to south. And this section is common to both study areas. So study area 1 and study area 2. So the option selection process in this section was relatively straightforward. Two options were considered, one on either side of the Griffin River. Ultimately, the eastern side was preferred as it used the existing wider paths that already have public lighting in place. Most of the park is on this side of the river, and so it will be more pleasant to cycle on and will have better connectivity to the amenities within the park. These photos just show some of the existing facilities within Green Valley Park. We'll just move on to the northern section of the route then. This is for study area 1. It crosses at the same existing footbridge over the N4 Lucan bypass. And the northern end of this section is at or near the Liffey Bridge in Lucan. It contains the Lucan village area and a network of suburban roads and streets. There are steep slopes in this section down towards the valley of the Liffey. So the route selection process in this section was considerably more difficult. There are narrow streets which make providing dedicated cycle lanes difficult. There are busy roads which make sharing road space with cars unsafe. There are steep slopes which can be unsafe to go down and unpleasant to go up for cyclists. And there are limited opportunities to cross the River Liffey. Let's touch on that last point first for crossing the River Liffey. So the design of a crossing of the River Liffey was particularly challenging for this cycle route, and 7 bridge locations were considered during the route selection process. The suitability of each bridge option itself, as well as its ability to connect to route options further north and further south, was considered. You can see there was some bridge options considered near the old pier from a bridge was washed away, and several bridge options near the existing bridge. So the downsides of the one further west was some of them involved private land take from a car park here, or would involve a pier which would interfere with the existing protected weir. If cyclists are approaching from here, they would need to go down to the promenade and then back up to the bridge, across and back this way, which is a fairly circuitous route. And there are also some flooding issues at the lower levels. Bridge options 3, 5, and 6 were brought forward for a more detailed study, and ultimately Bridge 5 was recommended to be part of the emerging preferred route, as it formed part of a route which most closely matched the scheme objectives. Full details of all this assessment can be found in the feasibility and options report, which is in the virtual consultation room. You can find it on the laptop beside the survey. I'll now go through some of the options that were developed for the Lucan area as part of the process. Please note these are not all of the options, and many more were considered. Details again can be found in the feasibility and options report. So the first one we'll look at is study area 1, option 1. This is ultimately the preferred route, which is the one we're proposing today. The route goes through Cherbury Park, either Cherbury Park Avenue or Cherbury Park Road. There are 2 options presented, which we'll go into more later. Then along Beach Park, Lucan Heights, a ramp down to Sarsfield Park, and to Lucan Bridge. All roads on this route are relatively flat with low traffic volumes and speeds. The level difference is dealt with using a new ramp that would connect Lucan Heights to Sarsfield Park. This could be at a constant gradient and keep cyclists away from traffic on a 4-meter wide path while they ascend or descend. We'll come back to this one again later. Study area 2, option 2. is similar to the first one, but it detours to take in Lucan Main Street and Lucan Village. Some disadvantages of this route are that cyclists would need to share road space with cars on Lucan Main Street, where speeds and volumes are above those that are permitted in the National Cycle Manual. We did look at options on Main Street that would provide dedicated cycle lanes. These would involve either removing all of the parking from one side of the street or making the village one way for traffic. These were not brought forward as they were considered to be too impactful on the village. This route is somewhat more circuitous than the previous one and will be less appealing to cyclists seeking a direct route, and it would require the existing taxi rank to be moved. Then move on to Study Area 1, Option 3. Along the roads of Esker Road, Esker Hill, Lucan Main Street, and Lucan Bridge. This appears like a more direct route and wouldn't need any new structures built. However, we noticed some issues with the section highlighted in red on Esker Hill. There's a photo of it shown here. The section of road is very narrow, it's very steep, and has sharp blind corners. The lane widths are below standard, and there is a footpath on one side of the road only, which is less than 1 meter wide. This section could not be used as part of a safe cycling and walking route in its current layout. The option that was designed as a cycle route involved closing this section of road to through traffic and making it a dedicated and cycling and walking link. This would mean that motorists would be required to detour via Lucan Heights. Again, on Lucan Main Street, cyclists would share road space with cars, and it would require the reallocation of a taxi rank. Now move on to look at a couple of options from Study Area 2. So Study Area 2 starts at the same place at the southern end, but the northern end is further west at the existing footbridge. It takes in BC Park and Lucan Domain, Adamstown Road, Leixlip Road, the N4, Lucan Bypass, and Ardevin Avenue were also considered. Study Area 2, Option 1. This involves a new link through BC Park. This would involve the clearing of some woodland and a new bridge being constructed over the Griffin River. This would open up BC Park as a through route. There will be a new path alongside the N4 Lucan Bypass, and there will be a new permeability link to connect through to Ardevin Avenue. The route would then continue down Leixlip Road and into using the existing pathways in Lucan Domain. The link through to Ardevin Avenue would require the use of some lands which are in private ownership and which have planning permission for the construction of a housing estate. This was considered an issue for this route. Another major advantage was that this route did not pass near the village of Lucan. This photo here shows the section alongside the N4 Lucan Bypass. And here is the junction of the Adamstown Road where the cyclists will be required to cross. The final option we'll look at Study Area 2, Option 2. Again, the section of Esker Hill shown in red will be closed to through traffic with motorists detouring via Lucan Heights. This photo here shows Leixlip Road. This is a busy high-speed road where speeds and volumes of traffic are above those again where it would be permitted to mix cyclists together. So on this option, the left-hand lane will be converted to a two-way cycle track and the bus lane would be removed. To compensate for the loss of bus priority, Leixlip Road will be made one way only during the AM peak. I'll just move on to discuss the emerging preferred route now in a little more detail. The existing paths through the southern side of Griffin Valley Park, which is part of the previously built Griffin Valley Greenway, will be used. The paths on the northern side of the park would be upgraded to a similar standard. The existing footbridges over the railway line and the N4 would be used. There will be new toucan crossings through signalized crossings, which will allow cyclists and pedestrians to cross all the roads that bisect the park. And the existing kissing gates would be upgraded and replaced with more cycle-friendly gates. These would allow cyclists to go through the gates without having to get off their bikes. Let's go through the emerging preferred route in the northern section now. The small arrows that are appearing here will show you where these photos were taken. The first photo here shows the section on Cherbury Park Road, and this is one of the two options which are presented in this section, and they will be discussed further in the breakout rooms later. So on option 1, cyclists would share road space with traffic. There would be limited changes, cycle symbols sprayed on the road to and directional signage to allow cyclists to find their way along this route. The second photo is taken on Cherbury Park Avenue. On this option, a new track will be built through the green area, and a new permeability link to open up the end of the estate will be constructed. Cyclists would then use the existing paths to link over to Beach Hill and then travel alongside the existing playing fields. Once they get past the playing fields, they would move on road and share road space with traffic. There'd be some raised treatments at junctions, and the junction between Beach Park and Lucan Heights would be realigned so that cyclists traveling this way would not need to make a left and a right turn. This would just be the straight through movement for them. A new ramp would be constructed then to link the Lucan Road down to Sarsfield Park. There's a basic visualization of what it could look like. This ramp will be the subject of the workshops as well. Cyclists would then proceed down Sarsfield Park, where again they would share road space with general traffic with just directional signage and cycle symbols on the road. Cyclists would then come into the roundabout, Lucan Village. This is a busy roundabout, and on this design, cyclists would proceed around the outside of the roundabout using new pedestrian crossings. This would allow less confident cyclists to stay away from the busy roundabout. Then proceed along the western side to reach the Lucan Bridge. There'll be a new bridge constructed to the west of the existing bridge, which could look like any of these. The design is at concept stage only, and the bridge type has not been selected. If the scheme is progressed, all of these bridge types and more will be considered, and a conservation architect will be involved. At the moment, the preferred bridge type is one that it is not attached to the bridge, as is the case in the bottom right image here, but rather a lightweight freestanding bridge with a gap between the old and the new bridges. This will avoid works on the protected structure and will allow pedestrians to get views of the old bridge from the new one. The footpaths on the existing bridge are very narrow, and this new bridge will provide a much higher level of service for pedestrians as well as cyclists, particularly for those in wheelchairs and those with prams. The scheme benefits. Along with the completion of the Royal Canal Greenway, the Grand Canal Greenway, and a section within Fingal County, this will contribute to the completion of a 40-kilometre recreational loop, which could be reached from basically anywhere in Dublin. It would provide enhanced facilities for commuters. It will connect to 20 schools, as shown in the image. This route avoids busy and high-speed roads. It avoids steep and narrow roads. It would have health benefits for users and would contribute to a reduction in traffic pollution and CO2 emissions. The next steps. Following this consultation, there'll be a preliminary design and planning stage, which would include further statutory public consultation, taking approximately 6 months. If successfully granted planning, there'd be a detailed design stage, which would take approximately 6 months. Be a procurement of a contractor, and a construction stage, which would take approximately 12 months.